This is James Holder for IFL TV in association with Macklin's Gym Marbella. We're at the post-fight press conference for Carl Frampton v Scott Quigg. Carl Frampton retaining his IBF World title, taking Scott Quigg's WBA title. Fortunate enough to be joined by trainer Shane McGUIGAN. First and foremost, congratulations, Shane.
Thank you very much, James. Appreciate it.
Talk to me a little bit about the fight. Did you expect it to play out the way it did?
I knew he was going to go on the back foot. I just knew it, and I just said to Carl, "Look, just win the first 3 minutes, and just from then on, we'll take every round as it comes." And I know he's got a habit of starting late and going, and pushing the fight late on, because he feels like, his opponents just blow out because he is so fit and strong. But you can't afford to give away that amount, that first half of the rounds, and that's what Carl just did enough. And he literally did enough, boxed his ears off, made him look silly. The more he was making him miss, he made him more and more frustrated. And I think Carl hurt him a couple of times. Fainted step, buzzed him down the pipe, and that's why Scott wasn't. As a pressure fight, you try and work your way in. You use your jab, you work your way in. You don't move. You don't lock your hands up and try and get as close as you can, and then just let your hands go. Because with a real clever guy like Carl, you just get outboxed. So I think. I think he's a fantastic fighter, Scott. But I just think he is easy outboxed, and that's what Carl did.
First sort of 4 rounds a bit cagey. Carl obviously boxed very tight, very very cautious, but boxed very well in the way he controlled the fight. When they met in the middle, it was electric for the crowd. And from a trainer's point of view, what are you saying to Carl when he comes back after the rounds at that point?
After the first 4 or later on? Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, the thing is you can't allow yourself to get emotionally attached. This is a job. This can separate. You getting a massive payday on your next fight, or going back to what you were doing before. Even if that, and Carl's been in this situation before. He's boxed in front of 16,000. He's headline bills, and I think this is all experience that he's built up. And I think I looked at Scott, and he really was struggling with the pressure. I saw him when we were looking across the ring at him. He was burning himself up, and the fact that he was loading, his feet were terrible tonight, because he was loading up so much. But he's so fit and so strong, and he's such a tough and game guy. And all credit to him. He put on the last 5 rounds were brilliant.
It's fantastic to hear your sort of praise and admiration for Scott. In the build-up to this, you and Joe Gallagher have been anything but best friends. Was there a moment after the fight where you spoke a second and sort of cleared the air between you both as men?
I tried to, but it wasn't received. But I'm a massive fan of Scott Quigg, and as a person, how he lives his life, what he lacks in ability, he makes up for in drive and determination, and you've got to admire that. He's a great guy, and he's a great role model for people to coming through, seeing how hard he works to get himself into a position like that tonight. And I think Carl's a little bit, he's a level above him there tonight. But credit to both of them.
How much is it a relief to you and your team that you are victorious tonight, and you're going to be going back to, well, in your case, Battersea, but in Carl's case, Northern Ireland, with a new shiny belt?
Yeah, I mean, a massive relief. I genuinely did expect it. I expected it to plan out like that. I knew that Scott was going to try and load up, and there's a lot of stuff that has been made up about Carl, with these sparring stories and stuff. But you can't take that into a game plan. And the fact is that he's been in the ring 22 times now, and he's been down twice, and he's got a great chin, and he's a world-class fighter. And I did expect that tonight, but it's a massive sigh of relief, and you can't really enjoy it until a week afterwards.
I bet. We've obviously spoke about an immediate rematch with Scott Quigg having a broken jaw, going to the hospital. We're not quite sure if that will happen. From a trainer's point of view, team's point of view, is that an option you see as feasible, or are there better options in your opinion out there for Carl Frampton?
I think Scott will be out with a broken jaw for a while. I mean, I didn't even realise he had a broken jaw until after the fight, and it started ballooning. I also went and shook his hand after his hand's in a bad way as well. I don't see it as an immediate rematch. I think he has to sort of work his way back up into a position. I believe those two are always going to have that animosity between each other and provide a great show because they're both world-class fighters. But I think, you know, Carl's going to go on to bigger and better things. I personally would like him to fight Leo Santa Cruz, you know, and do something at possibly a new weight division. But, you know, he made super bantamweight the easiest he's ever made it. So we have to really sit down with the team and find out where our next step is. You know, there's Rigondo as well that's lurking around there as well.
It'll be the mandatory for the WBA belt. Am I right in saying that?
Shinga is the mandatory for the IBF. So either way, we're going to have to go and work out a fight. But I believe that, you know, Carl can really make a statement, and I even think he can stop Leo Santa Cruz. And if he stops Leo Santa Cruz, that sets up the main man himself. Yes. So, you know, I mean, everyone's going to sit there and wait for him to, you know, fight Rigondo next and demand it. But, you know, I think things about timing, and, you know, I think these guys are going to definitely meet, but it's about, ticking up. You know, Leo Santa Cruz went to featherweight to get himself out of fighting Rigondo. He's still a super bantamweight fighting at featherweight. He's fighting Kiko Martinez as a featherweight. If Carl can beat him, no matter what weight division they fight, we classify him as super bantamweight, and then, you know, we've got a chance at taking on the man.
Carl looked fantastic today. How did he make the weight so easy? Was there sort of similar way to he done it for Texas, or was it a sort of different method for this?
No, in Texas, he likes his food, and look, I mean, you know, you can underestimate people, and, you know, when you're out there in the heat, there's a lot of salt in the food out there. You know, for instance, Paul Smith flew to fight Andre Ward. He came in way heavy. You know, Carl made the weight, but, you know, he was taking lots of weight off. Lots of train. You know, he was sweating more than ever. So, you know, we're used to this environment. We're used to this climate. You know, he's Belfast. You know, I don't know what I am, but yeah, we're used to this sort of temperature. So when we go out to 100 degrees heat in Texas, it kind of messed with his head. So we won't make that mistake again. But look, he made the weight the best. We had a chef. We had a food company called No Yo Food that's provided all the food, and I would definitely be using their services again. They've been fantastic.
Listen, on that note, congratulations to you and the team. No doubt how much of a relief it is for yourself, and thank you for giving me a bit of your time.
Really appreciate it, James. Thanks for having me.